Thank you so much, Dr. Nina Grossman, for inviting us. Thank you all for coming here. I have to thank, of course, MIFF for funding and inviting us all. Let me tell you something about myself, about my work. For many years I was a lawyer, and I was a peace activist, and I went all the way to Tunisia to meet Yasser Arafat years ago, before Oslo. Because as a human being, as an Israeli, I want peace. I want reconciliation. And in whatever I'm going to tell you now in my presentation, I want you to bear in mind, I'm pro-Palestinian. I'm pro-Palestinian and I mean it. I mean it because we have to remember that what I'm going to present you, and what I'm going to present you is a huge industry of lies, allegedly against Israel. It's mainly against the Palestinians. They are suffering out of it. Israel is prospering, generally speaking. Israel is prospering. Palestinians, in many ways, in many aspects, not exactly under the Israeli rule, and we are going to talk about it. We are not going to ignore anything. They are suffering in Lebanon. There is an apartheid in Lebanon. People don't know. Totally ignored. They are paying a high price. And the industry of lies perpetuates this suffering. As a peace activist, again and again, I was exposed to so many expressions, to so many lies. And many times I told myself, look, after so many years of conflict, this is the way people speak. But when it's coming from the Western media and the Western academia, it's a problem. You don't help the Palestinians by lying. On the contrary. And we have to remember it. I'm not representing the Israeli government. I'm not. I'm a journalist right now. I'm representing only my research. I'm not a politician. I'm a researcher, I'm a journalist. And I conducted the research in order, first of all, yes, to fight the lies, one. But second, in order to achieve peace. Because as long as this industry of lies is prevailing, we will never have peace. Let's begin with the presentation. As I told you many years ago before Oslo, when I was much younger, I met Yasser Arafat in Tunisia. It was before Oslo. And I have to admit that one of my first encounters with what I call today industry of lies was this professor, Ilan Pape. I read an article that he published. Transfer to those of you who don't know, the meaning is forcing people out from their homeland. Transfer is the official moral option recommended by the IDC. IDC, it's a university, a private university in Israel. I'm teaching there, by the way. Transfer proposed by senior Labour Party ministers to the government, and so on and so on. Full of lies. I called him as a journalist, and I told him, look, Dr. Pape, somebody published an article and used your name. It's full of lies. And it was a conversation of 20 minutes, and he could not validate anything. He told me, no, I wrote it. So what? Did you write it? When did it happen? And it was quite embarrassing. At the end of the conversation, I told him, look, tomorrow I'm going to publish an article. It's not nice that I will call you a liar, but I will call you a mega liar. Which I did. And I told him, I hope you will take me to court. He did not. The only one problem is that this person became the leading professor about the Israeli-Arab conflict. He published a book called The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, which is in every syllabus. It was published also here in Danish. He is most popular because he is totally anti-Zionist. And as another professor wrote about him, there is not one page in his book without distortions or lies. Not one page. But he is popular. He is totally popular because he is anti-Israeli. Yes, he is coming from Israel. Yes, he is Jew. So what? Yes, Israel is a democracy. Everyone can publish whatever he wants. And it's going on and on and on. In the very same week when he published his article, Ilan Pape, another article was published, again by an Israeli scholar, who is writing regularly for Haaretz newspaper. And according to him, gas chambers, wow, it rings a bell, gas chambers are not the only way to destroy a nation. It's enough to develop high rates of infant mortality, which means that we Israelis are behaving like the Nazis. We have a very sophisticated way to commit a genocide against the Palestinians. I read it and I was quite shocked. In that time, we did not have yet the Google as we have today. Now everyone here with his third generation mobile can immediately find out what is the infant mortality among Palestinians and what happened along the years. I found eventually the graph of the World Bank. And surprise, surprise, infant mortality among Palestinians decreased dramatically. Decreased. Just the opposite of what he wrote. Actually, what he wrote was a blood libel. A blood libel. And people believe it because, first, it's a very prestigious magazine. Second, he's an Israeli. Third, he's a Jew. And people believe it. But it's a blood libel, a modern blood libel, by the most enlightened, allegedly enlightened people. And it's going on and on and on. Some very simple lies. Gaza village flooded as Israel opened dam gates. Many news channels published the story. There is only one problem. There is not dam in Israel. But they published it. And there are so many kinds of media manipulations. 3 Palestinians killed as daily violence grinds on. Well, what is the story? The story is, let's say that 3 jihadists here in Denmark are trying to commit a suicide bombing. And let's say that the police is killing them. Do you think that this will be the headline? That's exactly what happened. They tried to commit a suicide attack. And here is what Reuters is publishing. What a manipulation. What a manipulation. It's amazing. Oh, a professor from Ivy League University, you know, the most prestigious universities in the United States, Columbia University. Truth, facts, and facts on the ground. Wow. You expect that now you will know the truth about Israel. And according to him, Tel Aviv is the only Western city that does not have any Arab or Muslim inhabitants. Wow. Some of you, I guess, have been in Tel Aviv. By the way, my doctor is an Arab. He lives in Tel Aviv. When I had a law firm, one of our lawyers was an Arab. She's living in Tel Aviv. I mean, this is a professor that is teaching his students about Israel. And he also published in that article that in his 2011 speech in the UN, Netanyahu called to expel the Israeli Arabs. Don't tell anybody. It's between us. I'm not a big supporter of Netanyahu. I'm not. I'm allowed. But Netanyahu never said something of that kind. Never. The only one sentence that he said in that speech was, the Jewish state of Israel will always protect the rights of all the more than 1 million Arabs. How did he conclude this from this? I have no idea. You have to be a professor. It reminds me that it was George Orwell who said, there are some ideas that are so stupid that they can be expressed only by intellectuals. And it's going on and on. So many people read an article from Haaretz by Gideon Levy. He is popular worldwide. The IDF routinely tether Palestinians to their donkeys and then spur the animal to drag the victim to his death. Wow, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's a Nazi-like kind of behavior. There was only one problem. It never happened. It just never happened. And it's going on and on and on with so many lies. By the way, I asked for 7 hours for my speech. They told me that it's impossible, so I'm not going to show you everything. Palestinians don't have swimming pools. Something very simple, swimming pools. The only one problem is that his newspaper published just some months ago about the so many swimming pools of the Palestinians. And it's going on and on and on. I'm skipping because we don't have time. Or another professor, the president of MESA. MESA is Middle East Studies Association, which means he is the president of all the scholars, professors in the United States that are teaching about the Middle East. And according to him, the whole story of 9/11, it's because of what Israel allegedly committed a kind of massacre in Jenin. And according to him, it was written in the special official Congress report about the 9/11 attack. Look at this. Three lies in one paragraph. One, there was not any massacre or attack in Jenin. There was a battle. Even a UN commission concluded that there was not anything which is close to a massacre. That's one. Second, it was never written in the official report. He invented something that does not exist. And you know why I'm telling you, it's not only because I read the report and I looked for the word Jenin. That, of course, did not appear. It did not appear. You know why? Because the allegedly attack in Jenin was 7 months after the 9/11. But they have the chutzpah. You know here the word chutzpah? Because in the United States, when I give lectures, I know that everybody knows this word. They have the chutzpah to blatantly lie. And it's going on and on and on and on and on. I will not go to all the aspects. We don't have the time. And people don't understand many times the conflict. I mean, you see the map of the Muslim world, of the Middle East. You cannot even see Israel. You just cannot see. It does not. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny place. Now, let me tell you something. It's easy. It's really easy to refute the blatant lies. I mean, I could give you many hours about media and academia. I'm not speaking about, it must be clear, I'm not speaking about Palestinians lying. I'm not talking about, not that they are not lying, but I'm not talking about it. I'm speaking about the Western media and the Western academia. Because many times, people are lying here, No, I'm not talking about it. I'm speaking about universities. I'm speaking about leading media channels. It's easy to refute. Believe me, it's easy. If you just check what they publish. If you just check. There are lies that are much more complicated. And it's not easy to deal with. And one of them is the Nakba. To those of you who don't know what is Nakba, Nakba is the Palestinian catastrophe, which means how they were expelled, forced out in 48, in the Independence War, or as they call it, the 48 War, War of Independence. And some professors, in order to worsen things, they even publish so many articles. The Nakba is one of the great crimes of modern history. Wow! One of the great crimes. Now, let me tell you something. In 48, people were forced out. It's not a lie. It's not a lie. During the war, yes, it happened. Most of them, by the way, escaped, most of the Arabs from Palestine. But 20%, 30% were forced out. So if it happened, how can I call it a lie? I'll tell you why I call it a lie. Because in order to understand that we are speaking about a huge manipulation, we have to understand what happened 100 years ago. What happened in the first half of the previous century. We began the previous century with empires. And one by one, all the empires collapsed. They collapsed because many national movements wanted independence, liberation, no more tyranny of the empires. They wanted freedom. And in the process of liberating themselves, there was a huge wave of population exchange. When we did not have anymore the Ottoman Empire, we received Turkey as a nation state. As a nation state, not anymore an empire, they expelled many minorities. The most famous one is, of course, the Armenians, and it was a kind of massacre even. But not only them. All the Christians, people call them Greeks, but they were not Greeks, they were Turks. But Christians, they were forced out. And it went on and on and on in every corner of Europe, and not only of Europe. In the Balkans, we are speaking about 7 million people. It ended only in the Yugoslavian war, which was a kind of, in the 90s, that was a kind of an ethnic cleansing war. And what happened? Out of Yugoslavia, we received something like 7 new entities. Why? I'm not saying if it's right or wrong, but people wanted self-determination. And that's what happened. And it went on and on and on and on between Poland and, after the Second World War, we are speaking about more than 12 million ethnic Germans. By the way, we call them ethnic Germans, but when you go to research, they were speaking German. Many of them were not even ethnic Germans. But they paid the price because of what Germany did in the Second World War, and they were forced out. Even if many of them were not Nazis at all. And it happened between Poland and Ukraine. And it happened between India and Pakistan. And it happened even in the second half of the previous century, when Cyprus, 250,000 of refugees from one side to the other. It happened with Armenia and Azerbaijan because of Nagorno-Karabakh, more than 1 million refugees. And in order to understand the atmosphere of the time and the norms and the values of the time, we have to remember that this person, for example, Fridtjof Nansen, I think he is Norwegian, he received the Nobel Prize because he initiated and conducted the population exchange between Greeks and Turkey. It was the norm of the time. And The Permanent Court of International Justice of that time, in the 30s, decided upon that this is the best way to solve problems, population exchange. And a lot of Arab leaders from Palestine, I call them Arab leaders from Palestine and not Palestinians because in that time, my parents who grew up in Palestine, they were Palestinians. Jews in that time called themselves Palestinians, not Arabs of Palestine. People don't know it. It's quite confusing for many people to understand. Because now, when you say Palestine, Palestinians, you mean only. But this definition was accepted and prevailed much later. Anyway, a lot of Arab leaders from Palestine, they said that the only one solution will be population exchange. The Peel Commission, a very important commission under the British mandate in 1937, decided upon that this is the best way to solve problem. And Nouri al-Said, who was a leading Arab prime minister, also the same, supported the idea, and on and on and on and on many leaders. Winston Churchill, who was the leader of the Allies in that time, in his speech in the British Parliament, he said, expulsion is the method which will be the most satisfactory and lasting. There will be no mixture of population to cause endless trouble, and so on and so on. Now, we have to remember, I'm not saying that it's good, forcing people. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that in that time, it was the norm. Now, for expressing this kind of idea, people will be sent to the ICC, International Criminal Court. But in that time, it was the norm. And when you do not say it, and you single out the Israeli-Arab conflict and say, "Ooh, people were forced out," then you make a manipulation. You have to know the background. You have to zoom out. You have to know what happened and what were the norms of the time. But it is totally ignored by so many scholars when they teach about the Nakba. They don't show the bigger picture. And it's going on and on in order to understand the atmosphere, what my parents, who were Palestinians, what they felt in that time. We have to remember that this person, Haj Amin al-Husseini, who was the leader of the Arabs in Palestine, collaborated with Hitler. And he was in Berlin during the whole war. Totally forgotten. And he wrote in his memoirs that we are collaborating with Germany in order to have a free hand to eradicate all the Jews from Arab countries and from Palestine. This was the atmosphere. And it's going on and on. Many declarations. Partition resolution. In 47, 2 states, a Jewish state and an Arab state. It was the UN decision. And what was the answer of the Arab states? They rejected it. Israel accepted it. There was not even Israel, but the Jewish delegate. Yes, we accept the UN partition resolution. 2 states, an Arab state and a Jewish state. And what was the answer of the Arab delegates? Total no. And the Secretary General of the Arab League declared publicly it's going to be a war, but not a simple war. This will be a war of extermination. Can you imagine what people felt, the Jews in Palestine, 3 years after the war, with the atmosphere of Haj Amin al-Husseini, a Nazi, publicly, openly, a Nazi. And the Secretary General of the Arab League, when they declare it, 3 years after the Holocaust. And it's going on and on and on, this kind of declaration by many Arab leaders. And the Arab League decided upon that Jews from Arab countries are going to be the hostages. And they did not only say a lot of massacres were carried out against Jews in Arab countries. Totally forgotten. Nobody speaks about it. People were killed only because they were Jews, again and again and again and again in many Arab countries. And the outcome was that, yes, I'm taking the number of the UN. More than 700,000 of Arabs became refugees. Yes, it happened. But a bigger number of Jews, because of the same conflict and because of the so many massacres and because of the so many persecutions, also became refugees. One more event of population exchange. Totally forgotten. And when they came to Israel, they lived in Ma'abarot, which mean transit camps, which mean actually refugee camps. And for years, during the 50s, they lived in Ma'abarot. Altogether, we are speaking about between 52 to 60 million people who became refugees only because of self-determination, population exchange. Out of them, nobody is a refugee today. It's over. It happened. It was a norm in that time. People are not refugees anymore. Except one group, the Palestinian group, which is emerging. And now there are, according to UNRWA, more than 5 million people. And it's going on and on and on. I skip because we don't have time. One of the reasons that the problem is perpetuated is because we have the UNHCR, which is dealing with all the refugees in the world up to now, for many years now. And we have UNRWA, which is dedicated only to the Palestinians. What people don't know is, first of all, why do we need 2 agencies? Why? Why Palestinians were excluded from the commission? It was because of political pressure of the Arab delegates in the UN. And UNRWA was established exactly 5 days after the commission was established. Totally ignored. Why? Why? In order not to solve the problem. In order to perpetuate the problem. And so many great humanistic EU and European countries are perpetuating the problem when they fund UNRWA. Instead of to tell enough. You should be under the same agency, like every other refugee. And the problem after 3 years would not exist anymore. But no, let's perpetuate. Let's cooperate. Let's collaborate with those who want to leave it as an open wound. And it's going on and on. By the way, people don't know, but there was one more agency taking care of refugees. It's called UNRWA. People don't know about it, I know. And UNRWA was dedicated only to Korea. And you know what? They worked during 3 million refugees, the Korean War in the 50s. They worked for several years, and it's finished. No more refugees. You don't hear about them. You don't have something like hundreds of books and shelves dealing with the Nakba of Korea. You don't have, because there is not any problem. But you have so many books translated to Danish and to every language in order to inflame the Nakba. How many books do you have about the Jewish Nakba? Almost 0. How many books do you have about the Korean Nakba? Almost 0. Almost 0. But here in the universities, here in Denmark, in Sweden, in the United States, Nakba, 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 as a brainwashing machine. Like if this is the only one problem. And it's going on and on and on. We don't have time. I will not go into all the details. We get to the 6 days war. And so many publications that I read, maybe some of you read, about the expansion aspirations of Israel. You know, this colonialist, imperialist entity. They wanted, this Zionist movement wanted to expand. And you have here this map. By the way, maybe Dina doesn't know where it was taken from. It's from my publication. And what happened in the reality? First of all, let's remember one thing. Until 67, from 48 until 67, there was not any occupation. There was not. So why did not they establish a Palestinian state? Ask yourself. Is it because of Israel? Israel did not control. Israel did not rule. Why they did not establish a Palestinian state? I'm not against it, by the way. Don't misunderstand me. I'm supporting any kind of peace initiative that is on the table. I'm supporting. But I'm asking them many times, why did not you establish your own state when there was not any Israeli control? As you have the answer, I have the answer. But what we have to remember is that in the years before the war, they declared again and again, not something against occupation, because there was not any occupation. They declared again and again they are coming, actually, to exterminate the Jewish state. There was not an occupation. Yes, we are coming to the Arab League, every Arab leader in the years before 67 war called to exterminate the state. We will throw you to the sea, as simple as it is. Totally forgotten. Gamal Abdel Nasser, who was the president of Egypt, destruction of Israel. We will wipe Israel off the map. And so on and so on. Ahmed Shukeri, who was the leader of the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, before Yasser Arafat. He was the leader. And 3 days before the war, he declared, whoever survives will stay in Palestine. How nice of him. How nice of him. Yes, but he had something to add. But to my opinion, it was 3 days before, and it was clear that the war is upcoming. To my opinion, no one will remain alive. Can you understand it? I was in that time, boy, 11 years old, something like that. And I remember myself digging in the garden in order to have a shelter, because we did not have basements or shelters or anything of that. We were afraid. People don't understand it. Oh, Israel is a superpower. You don't understand the atmosphere of the time. And it went on and on and on and on. And then the story of life under occupation. Israel is criticized. You know what? Sometimes fairly so. Not every criticism in Israel is part of the industry of lies. I have to make it clear. Not everything that is said about Israel is a lie. Not at all. It's not my claim. But when you hear this kind of declarations from Nobel Prize winner José Saramago, I like him very much as a writer. What is happening in Palestine is a crime as what happened at Auschwitz. Wow! That's what we are doing to the Palestinians. That's what we are doing. This is a lie. This is a lie. And we already spoke about infant mortality. I will skip it. Even when you go to global comparison, you find out that Palestinians are doing much better than the global average. They are doing better than Turkey. The same about life expectancy under the Israeli role because of the Israeli health system. They are doing much better than the global average. It was not like that in 1967. But because of Israel, because of the health system of Israel, which is modern and very developed, they enjoyed it in many aspects. They are doing better than some European countries. Totally ignored. And it's going on and on and on and on, when I don't know how much, and if you have here the BDS, but when they promote their motions of the BDS, what they argue is that Israel is destroying the Palestinian education. Wow, Israel is destroying. Let's see, according to them, only according to Palestinian sources, what happened from 1967 up to now. First of all, in 1967, there was not one high education institution in the territories, not even one. According to them, there was not. According to them, right now, official publication of the Palestinian Authority, they have more than 40 institutions right now. They were all built under the Israeli rule. And according to their own research, Palestinians now have the highest per capita rate of university graduates in the Arab world. Totally ignored. Let me make it clear. Before we get to the next chapter, let me make it clear. I'm not trying to say that occupation is good. It's not my claim. It's not my claim. What I'm saying is that there are so many manipulations and lies about the occupation. It's not that I like whatever is happening under the occupation. There are many debates in Israel about settlements, and let's not put it under the carpet. Yes, there are debates, political debates, legitimate debates, legitimate criticism. It's fair to criticize, it's fair to debate. Israel is a democracy. But you don't have to lie. You don't have to lie. And one of the biggest lies is about the genocide that Israel is committing. And you hear so many people, leading figures, saying again and again that actually Israel is committing a kind of genocide. You know what was the big lie of the Nazis? The big lie was that the Jew is the great danger to humanity. They repeated it, and whoever knows something about the Nazi propaganda knows that this was it's called the big lie. They repeated it again and again and again and again. And nowadays, we hear many, but someone like Arun Gandhi, the grandson of the famous Mahatma Gandhi, publishing an article. We have created a culture of violence. Israel and the Jews, it does not even distinguish between Israel and the Jews, are the biggest players, and that culture of violence is eventually going to destroy humanity. Wow. The same idea of the Nazis is appearing again and prevailing with the most enlightened, allegedly, enlightened people. The same idea. And it's coming again and again in so many cartoons, in so many newspapers around the world. This kind of image of Israel committing like what the Nazis committed. Or a minister in Britain saying the oppression of the Palestinian people is the major cause of violence in the world. Wow. Wow. Major cause. We Israelis responsible to what is happening in Sri Lanka when 40,000 civilians were killed. or to what is happening in Nigeria when the jihad is killing endlessly. We are responsible. Maybe we are also responsible to what is happening in Syria. I have no idea. She even blamed Israel in the global warming. People sometimes are obsessed. And it's going on and on. An American professor, just some weeks ago, by the way, guilty of genocide, Netanyahu and Hitler. Sometimes, I have to tell to American audiences that I will not forgive some professors that I'm debating. I'm telling them, I will never forgive you that you force me to defend Netanyahu. But I have to. And when you go to global polls, you find out that Israel is the most negative in influence on the world. People believe the lies. It's not only, some extreme left, activists, scholars, journalists. No. People believe it. By the way, now it's better. Now Israel is here. It's changed places with Iran and North Korea. Ooh, how lucky we are. And it's going on and on and on. Now, what are the facts? You understood that I like to make this kind of comparisons already. 86 million people were killed since the foundation of Israel in many wars. Some people say that the number is much bigger, but leave it. Let's say 86. I take the minimal numbers in order to prove my point. Out of them, 12 million people were killed in the Muslim and Arab world, most of them by Arabs and Muslims. In the Israeli-Arab conflict, altogether, independence war and on and on and on, we are speaking about between 80 to 120,000, which I'm not proud. And during the Israeli control over the territories, we are speaking about between 11 to 12,000 people that were killed. Again, I'm showing it only in order to show you the proportions, not because I'm proud about one person that were killed. And when you check the contribution of Israel to the violence in the world, you find out that it's something like 0.0006, something 0.0006, something like that, which means statistically we are speaking about zero. But yet, you find so many people educated, enlightened, informed, blaming Israel because of the violence in the world. It's pity to say that one of the main causes to violence in the world right now is the global jihad. They are killing thousands every month. About most of it we don't know. You know why we don't know? Unless you are following as a researcher, as I do. Why we don't know? Because who wants to report about 2 suicide bombers in a mosque in Nigeria or in Somalia or in Libya or in other places, Afghanistan, Pakistan, of course. People don't care about it. We do report, we, journalists, media in general, we report about it when it's happening in Berlin or London or Paris. We do not report about most of what is happening. And you know who are the victims of the jihad? They are not Europeans. They are not Israelis. They are not Zionists. They are not Americans. 99% of the victims of the jihad are Muslims. Totally ignored. Totally ignored. The jihad is against, first of all, is against Muslims. They are kuffar, which mean infidels. They are not kuffar because many times they go, as I told you already, to a mosque and commit a suicide bombing. Why? Many times, my son asked me several times, why? He sees that I'm following the information and then he's asking me, why? Why? Why they kill? Why did they go to a crowded market all the market was crowded with women, all of them with the niqab, burqa, and children. Why did they kill all of them? Why? And you don't find. I mean, if you're trying to make sense, you just cannot. But most of the victims are Muslims, devoted Muslims. And it's going on and on and on and on and on. And when something is happening in Paris or in London, you find out people like Jimmy Carter, the ex-president of the United States, saying that actually it's because of the oppression of the Palestinians. Wow. Like if the perpetrators know at all where is Israel on the map. They don't. And the same with the neighboring country, Sweden. The foreign minister, again and again, she's saying, oh, it's because of Israel. What? They killed themselves and it's because of Israel. And it's going on and on and on and on and on. Let me skip because we don't have time. But what is the real genocide threat? So let me tell you, first of all, the Hamas charter declaring publicly, openly, about extermination of Jews. And this is what they broadcast in Al-Aqsa channel, which is the official channel of the Hamas. I hope we can hear.
اللهم يا ربنا ويا مولانا ويا سيدنا اهزم أعداءك وأعداء الدين في كل مكان. اللهم عليك باليهود ومن هاودهم والنصارى ومن ناصرهم والشيوعيين ومن شايعهم. اللهم أحصهم عددا واقتلهم بددا ولا تغادر منهم أحدا.
Kill all the Christians and all the Jews to the last one of them. Did you see it in your TV channels? Did they ever report about it? No, they did not. But it's not a one-time show. It's again and again. Here is another one on their TV channel. Al-Aqsa.
يا الله يا الله احصي اليهود عددا واقتلهم بددا ولا تغادر منهم أحدا.
And it's going also to the children programs. The same kind of idea, unfortunately.
انت بدك تصيري زيه؟ ان شاء الله لما تكبري.
سنطخ اليهود.
كلهم؟ طيب.
Kill all the Jews. Kulhum, which mean all of them. And it's going on and on and on. And you know, it's not only in Al-Aqsa, Hamas official channel. It's coming to Europe. You know that the slogan of Der Stürmer, the Nazi newspaper, was in every daily issue. The Jews are our misfortune. Here it is appearing again and again. In every. And you see a demonstration against Israel. Participants are radical left, radical right-wingers, and jihadists, all together with the same kind of slogan. But now it's not the Jews are our misfortune. Israel is our misfortune. The same kind of idea, repeating itself. Same kind of idea. By the coalition of extreme left and extreme right and jihadists. And it's going on when a parliament member from Holland participating in a demonstration of jihadists where they shout, Hamas, Hamas, Jews to the gas. And yes, it is frightening because in the last half year, you heard, I guess, about the demonstration in the Gaza border. It was reported in all the newspapers in the world. But what they did not report, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm wrong, that this is what they carry in the demonstrations. Did you see it on your TV? Did you see it? But again and again, That's what they carry. And the Western media just ignore it. Again and again. It's only from the last half year. And Hezbollah, the leader, is talking about, I will not show you all the TV, all the video because we don't have time. Speaking about what? We have to concentrate the Jews in Palestine in order to commit, he calls it, the final solution. Totally ignored. And it's going on and on and on and on. Just one word about peace process. I mean, I can give you a lecture of 2 hours only about the peace process and what happened. And as I said, again, I'm not supporting the official viewpoint of the Israeli government in many aspects. But just to remind you one thing. In 2000, there was a huge effort to achieve peace. After the Oslo process, in the 90s, at the end, 2000, there was the most important, I would say, the most important initiative was of Bill Clinton, the President of the United States. To those of you who don't know, 2 states for 2 peoples, a Jewish state, a homeland for the Jewish people and a homeland for the Palestinian people, no more settlements, compensation to the refugees. I would say, to my opinion, a decent proposal. Some people will disagree with me because they will say that he gave them too much. I think it's my opinion. And anyway, in that time, there was a turning point. Why there was a turning point? Because we have to remember what happened before, and maybe Rabbi Carlos will even elaborate about it, about history. But they rejected the partition plan. They declared the 3 no's after 6 days war. But for the first time, this person, he was the ambassador of Saudi Arabia in Washington. A very close friend of Bill Clinton. In that time, he convinced his king, Saudi Arabia king, and the president of Egypt, Mubarak in that time, and some other Arab leaders, he convinced them, surprise, surprise, to accept the Clinton plan. Even when it included the right of the Jewish people to a homeland. He convinced them. It was, to my opinion, it was a historical change. And everyone was waiting to the Israeli government convened and decided upon to accept the Clinton plan. To accept. Ehud Barak was in that time the prime minister. And he met Yasser Arafat just minutes before he went to the White House to deliver the Palestinian response, and he told him one sentence before he left. We are supporting, the Arab leaders, the Arab countries, we support the plan. Please go and say yes. Go and say yes. But he said also one more sentence. If we lose this opportunity, it is not going to be a tragedy. This is going to be a crime. Arafat went to the White House and committed both, a tragedy and a crime. He rejected the Clinton plan. Now you might ask me, how do I know what happened behind closed doors? I'll tell you how do I know. I know because Bandar Ben Sultan himself published it. Not one time, but again and again. And again, totally ignored by so many scholars who are writing so much about the peace process. Totally ignored. And I will skip because I don't, just one word about BDS. So many people think that the BDS is a non-violent kind of movement, and we have to support because they are pressuring Israel in a non-violent way. No. It's a manipulation. Just listen to what the leaders of the Palestinians, of the BDS are saying, publicly, openly. Just listen to them.
The two-state solution, as typically expressed, is nothing more than a last-ditch plan to save Zionism.
I clearly do not buy into the two-state solution. It is not just pragmatically impossible now, it was never a moral solution to start with.
Simply, they are not supporting any peace initiative. They are supporting, as another leader of the BDS publicly said, the liquidation of Israel, the extermination. They don't support any kind of peace. But people are attracted because they think that this is a kind of movement that is only exercising some pressure on Israel. No, it is not. And it's going on and on and on and on and on and on and on. I will not, I will skip and skip and skip. I will just tell you one thing about the apartheid state. Some of you are exposed to the story of apartheid propaganda. And even here in some universities, you have this kind of apartheid week against Israel. So let me tell you a very short story. This person is familiar to some of you, was the president of Israel. He was sentenced to 7 years in jail. I'm not proud of what he did, but I'm proud that Israel is a state of the rule of law. What people don't know is that he had 3 judges. 3 judges who sent him to jail. The presiding judge, was an Israeli Arab. This is the apartheid state. By the way, in Israel it was a non-issue. It's embarrassing me that I even have to mention it. But because there is such a propaganda, a huge propaganda about Israel as an apartheid state, people have no idea about the reality. People just don't know. And it's going on and on and on and on and on. I'm coming to the last chapter. Israel have many people who express legitimate criticism. Not everyone is against the very existence of Israel. Not everybody is part of the industry of lies. No. And people who are supporting Israel many times are saying, look, you have the right to retaliate against the rockets of the Hamas. Yes, you have the right. Nobody can bear something like that. You have the right. But what you did in protective age, in cast lead operations, was a kind of overreacting. You killed too many innocent civilians. This is the main claim. And let me tell you, the most terrible document, actually, in this respect, was the Goldstone report after the cast lead operation. Maybe you heard about it, maybe not, but this was a UN report, 600 pages that you did not read, and I had to read, unfortunately. And the main claim was that Israel intentionally killed innocent civilians. A terrible allegation against Israel. A terrible. In that time, before he published his report, I corresponded with Goldstone. And he was nice. He always answered me in a very nice and polite way, I have to admit. Immediately after he published his report, he was interviewed again and again by many media channels. And he was fairly asked the same question again and again. And the question was, look, many innocent civilians are killed in many battlefields. Why do you single out Israel? Why do you blame Israel? Why do you say that Israel, when civilians are killed everywhere, especially when the combatants of the Hamas, the terrorists, are hiding in civilian areas. So why do you blame Israel? So listen to what he answered. once and again, there is a huge contradiction between the first response of him to the second one, so listen carefully. It's very short, but it is highly important. He was asked by an Israeli journalist, and listen to his response.
You know, the U.S. in its war on terror carpet bombs Afghanistan and Iraq and hurts innocent civilians. Is the U.S. then guilty of war crimes?
Well, certainly if war crimes were committed, of course they should be investigated. Any war crime should be investigated. And, you know, I don't with respect accept your description of what they did. It's something obviously I haven't investigated.
To those of you who did not hear what he said, you know what, I did not investigate the US Army, so don't ask me about the US Army. Don't ask me. I don't know. He was asked the same question in the United States. And 3 days after, surprise, surprise, he had a new answer. Let's listen.
Israelis claim that if you hold them to this standard that you've just described, that law prescribes for conflict, any democracy that's fighting terrorism is likely to find itself dragged into an international court of justice. I mean, do you consider that a valid concern?
No, absolutely not. Take the United States fighting wars in Kosovo, in Iraq, in Afghanistan. They have certainly at a high level gone to extremes to protect innocent civilians.
To those of you who did not hear what he said to the American journalist, after he said that he doesn't know anything about the US Army, 3 days after, we can guess that in 3 days he conducted a new research. And now he knows, and what he knows is that the US Army has gone to extremes to protect innocent civilians. Wow. He did it in quite a short time, the new investigation. What is more interesting is that when you ask, for example, Martin Dempsey, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the head of the American Army, he will tell you that when he wants to know how to protect innocent civilians, he sends his officer to Israel because Israel is protecting innocent civilians more than any other army. I guess that Dempsey knows a bit more than Goldstone about wars and casualties. It's not only that. I went furthermore, because the main claim was that the Israeli army indiscriminately fired the Gaza inhabitants. So if it was a kind of indiscriminate fire, the graph, the age distribution of casualties should have been just like this one. So I took all the publications of the Hamas. Every day during the battle they published the name of the casualties, the gender, and the age. Every day. So I took their information, not the Israeli army information. And I created this graph of casualties. And what we find out, it's according to them, that most of the casualties were men, not women, in the fighting age. Wow. Wow. There is not one army in the world in the last 20 years that can present something of that kind. Yes, innocent people are killed, unfortunately. But no one is keeping human lives as the Israeli army. No one. And I checked every battlefield that was mentioned by Goldstone. I went one by one in order to check how many combatants and how many non-combatants, as it is called in the academia about casualties, how many were killed in every battlefield, how many combatants, how many non-combatants. I will get to the last graph. And what you find out is actually that Absolutely, of course, but also proportionally. Israel killed much less than in any other battlefield in the last 20 years. Much less. So I sent one more email to Goldstone. And I wrote to him, "Dear Mr. Goldstone, you are completely right when you claim that the US Army went to extremes in order to protect innocent civilians. You were completely right. But look at the numbers, look at the graph. The meaning is that the Israeli army went to the extremes of the extremes of the extremes of the extremes in order to protect innocent civilians." Surprise, surprise, he did not answer me. As I expected, by the way. But I must admit that not because of me, but because of many other reasons, he eventually published an article saying, if I had known then what I know now, the Goldstone report would have been a different report. At least he retracted. By the way, the New York Times refused to publish it. It was published in the Washington Post. Actually, he is summarizing all what I wanted to say. I want just people to know the realities. It has nothing to do with political views. Nothing to do. I mean, you can be in favor of this policy or against it. It's not the point. The point is that we are all brainwashed with so many lies about the conflict. I believe in peace. I want peace to prevail and not lies. And you have to decide. You are in favor of lies or you are in favor of peace. I'm in favor of peace. And I must admit that I told you that I met Yasser Arafat already. I keep on meeting the Palestinians. Just some weeks ago, I met Saeb Arikat, who is the head negotiator of the Palestinians. I meet them all the time. I have many Palestinian friends. I tell them what I'm telling you, I'm telling them. Because I'm fighting the lies. And I'm fighting the lies because I want peace. Thank you so much for listening. If you want, yes, if you want some Q&A.
And I just want to ask you if you could say something about the reasons of, after your opinion, the reasons for the massive lies.
First of all, I have to admit that this is always the first question that I'm asked. So I need another book to publish. I mean, most people don't know the reality. I mean, there are two questions. What is happening? And that's what I lectured about. And the other question, when you know the what, then you ask, why? Why people lie? Why many so scholars and politicians and activists, why they are lying? There are many reasons. There are many books that were written about this point of the why. I have to admit that I limited myself to the question of what is happening. First of all, I want to show, I'm glad that you ask why, because you can ask why only when you know the what. There are many reasons. I can mention some, it's a long conflict, one. Second, Israel is the only place where there is a kind of conflict, and you have an access. You don't have any access to Libya or Somalia or to Darfur or to Afghanistan. No journalist will dare to go to many other battlefields. He will not go. But Israel, I mean, it's nice. You have the access. Or as a good friend of mine, a journalist from France, told me once, I told him, I asked him the same question. Why do you have so many journalists here when this is, comparing to other conflicts, it's about zero almost. Then he told me, are you crazy? Do you want me to go to Darfur? I'm coming to Jerusalem. 5 minutes, I'm taking video of of a demonstration. It looks nice because there are some smoke and if nobody was hurt in the demonstration. 5 minutes after, I can sit in the best restaurant. Do I have it in any other place? In Afghanistan, in Darfur, in Pakistan? I don't. So we are all coming here. Because and why so many activists? I mean, they are working for human rights. How come they don't work for human rights in Darfur? And not in Somalia, and not in Libya, because they don't have an access. The only one place where they can come is to Israel, because Israel is a democracy. Israel is a democracy. Yes, we pay a price for being a democracy, but I'm proud to come from this democracy.
Yeah, my name is Mrutyunjay Mishra. I'm from India originally. Thank you for a very inspiring talk. The question I want to ask you is that you kind of said that when the jihadis basically attack, they're basically killing Muslims. But I want to tell you that in India's 9/11 was 26/11 when there was this terror attack in Mumbai. Indian police is not very good in doing the job, but they were pretty good, smart in recording all the conversation. Yeah. And one of the things that came out clearly was that the man from Pakistan was telling these boys who were doing the massacre in Mumbai, kill the Jews. He said, kill the Jews. There are so many of Indians, but killing one Jew is like killing 50 other Indians. This is recorded. So one of the things is that the jihadis are actually going after. That one last thing I want to mention is that I was constantly glued to the television because I was seeing who was coming out. And all those who were coming out alive were Muslims. Okay. So they were not killing the Muslims. They were saying that if you can name the, Muhammad's mom or whatever, say some words. So there is a strategy. And what do you have to say to that? Don't you think that the jihadis are going after others? I'll tell you. First of all, it's very interesting what you're saying. First. Second, there is not any contradiction because when there is a rule, there are some exceptions out of the rule. Now, when you check the facts, you find out that most of the victims are Muslims. So jihad is killing mainly Muslims. Because of in one operation or other, they decided not to kill the Muslim, but only Jews. I mean, there are not many Jews in India. There are very few, and they killed something like 1 or 2 in that in another operation. Okay, but they did not have one Jew in that hotel when it happened, as we remember. Now, I guess that this guy from Pakistan who ordered the terrorists or who gave them directions, he did not meet a Jew in his life. Let's admit it. He did not, because there are not Jews in Pakistan, and I think there is 1 or 2 in Afghanistan, if they did not pass away. I know about 10 years ago. So yes, unfortunately, there is an anti-Semitic education in many places where you don't have one Jew. So yes, it happens, but the main fact is that 99% of the victims in Libya, in Somalia, in Yemen, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, when Taliban is killing Muslims, he is not looking for Jews in Kandahar because they don't have Jews. So in one operation, maybe what you are saying, and I'm sure that what you say is correct, yes. I mean, but it does not contradict the main rule. And the main rule is we are killing everybody that we don't like, even if he is a devoted Muslim. And most of the victims are devoted Muslims. Yes.
I should noting, in English, Israel is getting very strong economically, militarily, in all aspects, despite of this industry of lie. Yeah. So my question is why we should care at all, because the most important decision maker in the whole country, they know the truth and they act accordingly. So why we should care? Why we should make all this effort because nothing can be changed. The real people which is control the world, and the government, they know the truth and they act accordingly.
First of all, yes, you are right. Israel is prospering despite the industry of lies. Yes. So if Israel is prospering, that's your question, why do you have to fight at all this industry of lies? I'm fighting it because I'm a human being. I'm fighting it because I want peace. I'm fighting it because this industry of lies is perpetuating the conflict. So I'm doing it as a human being. We all have to do it as human beings. And this place where I'm standing right now, let's not forget, Danish people, there was the most humanistic during the Second World War. It's something that we as human beings cannot forget. I mean, all layers of population voluntarily protected Jews and smuggled them to Sweden. They did it, nobody forced them to do it. They did it because they are human beings. As a human being, I see the suffering. And I know that one of the main reasons is this industry of lies. So I'm not fighting only for me as an Israeli. I'm fighting for peace. I'm striving for peace as a human being. I do care about my neighbors. I do care about Palestinians. Don't misunderstand me. Yes, I'm an Israeli. But I want them to prosper, not to suffer. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Could I just, that's so beautiful. I don't want to disturb because it's perpetuating the conflict. But I'll tell you why I'm doing it. I'm more selfish. I'm American and Danish, and I live in Denmark. And when I see people saying horrible, hateful, ignorant things and indoctrinating children and leaving the maps that lie in the classroom, as we say in Danish, jeg kan ikke have det. I cannot accept that in my adopted country that people are being made more and more stupid and hateful. So yes, I also care about the conflict, but I'm Danish and I hang around here, so that's why I do it.
And I'll tell you, I have to add something. I read several books about genocide, and it's very interesting. Daniel Jonah Goldhagen, one of the most famous books about genocides that took place. And he is emphasizing that before committing a genocide, there is a process of brainwashing. There is a process of brainwashing. Always. But always. Before what happened in between Tutsis and Hutus, there was a brainwashing machine. So I'm not saying Israel is strong enough to defend itself. But when I look at what is happening in many places in the world, including in the West, I'm afraid as a human being from this brainwashing machine. It happened before, and what I showed you now, you see that the enlightened people are following the patterns of the old anti-Semitic propaganda. Yes, as a human being, we are all, Jews and non-Jews, should be afraid of it. We have to fight it in order to achieve peace, in order to prevent the aspirations for genocide.
May I say something?
Get the microphone.
It's an answer to the question, why should we care? I think I can
just do it because we're recording.
Yes. Because it's so very personal to me. I have a son-in-law. He's a very, very nice guy. But we don't talk about it very much because it's so hurting, so dangerous. But I understand that he believes all that about Israel. And you can understand how much it hurt me. He's married to my daughter. And I understand exactly what you say. I've been for Israel in all my life. And now I had a very, very nice son-in-law who believes all those lies. So that's very personal. For me, it's very important that something could happen. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you for saying it.
I want to thank you for a great the job you're doing.
Thank you.
And maybe you could tell me, I'm a little bit interested in hearing the answers when you speak with the Palestinian leaders and your Palestinian friends, what they say to all your facts and so on. If you could tell me a little bit about it.
In very short, some of them are quite honest, and honest enough to know that I'm completely right. But politically, they are prisoners of this brainwashing machine. Even if they know that they are manipulated, and sometimes they are manipulating themselves. But I don't give up. And as you see, I meet Palestinians again and again. And I'm in the very personal level, some of them know. And my criticism against the Western media and academia is that actually they encourage them to keep on with the rejectionism, with not accepting Israel as a Jewish state. That's why I'm against them. I mean, because I think if they were not supported so much, so many NGOs are supported by Europe, by the EU, by Spain, even some of them by Denmark. But those NGOs are part of the industry of lies. Enough. So when I'm telling them, they say, well, we do not want, some of them, we do not want to lose this kind of special status. In the 60s, we had Che Guevara in the American universities. Right now, we have the kafiyya, the Palestinian kafiyya. We are the heroes of what maybe some of you know, intersectionality, which is a kind of a movement that is combining all the women, blacks, minorities. We are the heroes, we the Palestinians. What do you want me? They are asking me. Do you want me to give up this special status? We are enjoying it. We have so many profits out of it. We cannot give it up. Even if they know, and some of them, not many of them, but some of them tell me, yes, we know that you are totally correct. And when I'm telling, so one of the reasons that we do not have peace is not because of them. It's because they are encouraged by the Western media, by the Western academia. They are encouraged to keep on. And this is a tragedy. So on the personal level, yes, I can be a good friend. We can hang out to drink beer. But on the political level, yes, we have a problem, and part of the problem, and not a small part, is what's happening in the West.
But is there a little hope that it will be better? Because I see that Saudi Arabia have bought a lot of things from Israel, and there will be a contact between Israelis and the Arab states. Could it be possible in the economic way that there will be an opening?
First of all, there is a change. There is a change. Even the status of Israel is getting a bit better in the last 2-3 years. People understand that the problem is not Israel. When you just watch and if you have some sense, you understand that the problem is not Israel. The problem is with some jihad aspirations, nothing to do with Israel. First. Second, yes, there is a change. When you read, and I do anyway, articles of many intellectuals in the Muslim and Arab world, you see a beginning of change. You see something. I mean, and people are saying, we cannot keep on with what they call externalization of the guilt. we have to look after ourselves. It's not Israel the cause of our problems. You see a change, and practically on the ground, the connections between Israel and some Arab countries are much stronger than what people know economically. For example, with the Gulf countries, with Egypt, with Saudi Arabia, and with some other countries. So something is happening. Not yet with the masses, not yet. But there is a change. If it will continue, then in some years, maybe we will achieve something. I do hope, but something is happening. We have to look at it.
Thank you. One more question, and I think we have to wrap up.
You started your lecture talking about the Israeli media and what lies are spread from there. So I've been asking myself the question throughout the whole time. What makes it so difficult because obviously you have been discussing in Israel. What makes the voice of truth so weak?
It's very interesting because many times when when I give lectures in American universities, they come, just as you said, with articles of Israeli scholars or with articles of Haaretz, and they tell me, look, they contradict what you're saying. I said, it's very nice, because not many people know where Haaretz is published. And I tell everybody here in the audience where Haaretz is published. Then he said, in Israel. I said, thank you so much. This is the best proof that Israel is a democracy. It doesn't mean that what is written, the content, is correct. Not at all. But this is the best. I'm glad that I'm coming from a democracy. And just like in any other country, some leftist ideas are more prevailed in the media, in the academia. We are suffering from the same kind of problem. I'm not a right-winger at all. I'm not. But still, we are suffering from the same kind of problem, just like here, just like in the United States, just like in many other places. So Israel is part of the West in that sense. Israel is part of the West. And yes, we pay a price. For being a democracy, you have to tolerate this kind of freedom of speech that includes lies. Not in every place. Freedom of speech includes lies. In the United States and in Israel, it does include. So, yes, we pay a price, but it's okay. I want it this way and not to shut down anybody's mouth.